Welcome to all at this conference on just transition for worthy life beyond fossil fuel and green colonialism. This event is inside the conference on Beyond the Globalization Transition organized by the Society of Geographical Study in Italy. And we, as the new Jean Monnet Center of Excellence on Just Fossil Fuel Transition, we want to share today some reflection on the topic of transition from fossil fuel and the implication of green colonialism related to what is called the transition mineral or the alternative energy production. Today we have a different contribution. Through this contribution, we have the possibility to stay around these complex topics, because just transition from fossil fuel is not easy from one side. It is not just a technological transition, but this is especially a institutional transition, a social transition, in which the issue of justice, the issue of agency, the issue of inclusion are very important. In this morning, we started with a key presentation of our colleague reflecting on a branch of reflection in geography on what is the geography of a transition and how transition is created from below, and especially how transition is based not only on technology, but especially institution and the social dimension. So we start with the first presentation of today of Emanuele Lucci. He shared with us an imaging, a sort of geovisualization of what can be the transition from a country with a higher production of fossil fuel, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and how the multi-criteria analysis can help us in imaging before acting what can be transition for a country with a strong rely on fossil fuel. Please, Emanuele, the floor is yours. Thanks. You have 11 minutes for your presentation.
Thank you very much, Professor De Marchis. So I will be presenting the climate justice for fair and just transition, a multi-criteria analysis of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, a research carried out by Edoardo Crescini and myself. First of all, a bit of context setting. So the research targets the Democratic Republic of the Congo, so the DRC, located in the heart of Africa. It's an extremely rich country, both in terms of the raw resources it holds in the subsoil, but also for its biodiversity, which makes it one of the 17 megadiverse countries in the world. As a matter of fact, it holds the significant part of the Congolian rainforest, the second largest rainforest in the world, in the central northern region of the country, but also savanna in the southern region and mountain forests on its eastern border. And it contains the largest tropical peatland in the world, which is an ecosystem extremely important for its carbon storage capacity. The country has also a troubled political and social history, with the current Congolese political context dominated by a kleptocratic system sustained by clientelist structures and extremely high levels of corruption, which bases itself, its strength and survival on the personal interests linked with the mining industry, which makes most of the country's national budget. However, the wealth is divided in a very evenly way, and the country's population is affected by high rates of poverty, malnutrition, all of these exacerbated by decades of civil conflicts in the east of the country. Now, with regard to the scope of this research, in light of the efforts to mitigate the effects of the climate crisis, we aimed at identifying the unburnable carbon areas in the DRC through a climate justice approach. So the first thing should be to define the concept of unburnable fossil fuels. The concept was defined in 2021 by the Carbon Tracker Initiative, and it identifies part of our planet's fossil fuel reserves as non-exploitable, thus unburnable, and with the aim of respecting certain carbon budget thresholds, which are the sum of anthropogenic CO2 emissions that should not be exceeded to remain within certain limits of the average temperature increase over pre-industrial levels. So building on this concept, a research in 2021 by Welsby and his colleagues integrated a geographical dimension to the concept, defining areas of unburnable fossil fuels at continental scale for not exceeding 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to to pre-industrial levels. And for the African continent, we're talking about 51% of oil reserves and 49% of gas reserves. So on our side, we use these levels to identify unburnable carbon areas in the DRC through a climate justice perspective. So not only limiting ourselves to an economic cost and benefit analysis alone. And to do so, we use a spatial multi-criteria decision analysis for which we developed 3 main indices with 5 criteria each, representing the interests of different stakeholders and right holders involved. And the goal was for each index, as well as for the 3 combined, to identify the most suitable areas for extraction. And we used a TOPSIS methodology in which every criteria is defined either as a benefit or a cost. And based on the data provided, it's possible to define ideal positive and negative solutions, thus allowing us to assess the suitability of the alternatives. The map that you are seeing offers an overview of the geographical scope of the research, shows all the oil and gas blocks in DRC, those in production, those included in the 2022 bid round, which we'll see in a moment, the other blocks identified by the Ministry of Hydrocarbons, and in yellow, those offshore, which are contested as operated by Angola, but in DRC's exclusive economic zone. So what makes also this research very relevant is the fact that in 2022, the Congolese government launched a bid round for the concession of 30 hydrocarbon blocks, 27 oil blocks and 3 natural gas, with the scope of developing and diversifying its economy and respond to internal energetic needs. Now, although we don't have the time to explore all the DRC's oil history, it's worth highlighting how the country's significant potential has been exploited over the past decades, mostly as a policy asset, both to strengthen alliances and limit the rise of rivals, which resulted in a very limited industry growth. And as you can see in the map, the production so far has been limited to the coastal region. And this being said, the oil industry in DRC has been subject to many criticism, both from national and international civil society and NGOs for the corruption cases related to it, but also for the socio-economic impact it causes on the region, such as the spillage of processing products, which result in water and soil degradation, but also gas flaring, which is the burning of the natural gas associated with oil extraction, and which, despite being illegal by the Congolese law, it causes soil and vegetation degradation and increases respiratory diseases. So of course, it's not surprising that the government's initiative was met with much criticism for the alarming elements that development of fossil fuel industry would have in a context such as the one of the DRC. So moving on to the criteria we use for the research, for the economic index, we consider the presence of a transport network, which is an economic advantage for reaching the most remote areas of the country and transport goods and material. Something similar involves the proximity to the only possible export points located either on the coast or on the Ugandan border, where the export could join a newly constructed pipeline stretching all the way to the Indian Ocean. Also, given the limited extent of the national power grid, we took consideration the presence of nearby power plants. Also, the presence of 2D seismic exploration, which are used to identify the oil reserves underground, and the one that are already carried out could be an advantage over exploration costs. And finally, for this index, we use the political violence rate, considered as a strong deterrent to foreign investments. For the environmental index, the presence of lakes and streams represent a a high risk linked to potential spills. Here you can see the main lakes and reservoirs, and here the hydrographic network. We also analyzed the potential overlapping between the blocks and the protected areas in the country. And something similar was done for the range of critically endangered mammals present in DRC. And finally, we calculated the overlap with the Congolese tropical peatland, which I was mentioning earlier, which stores an amount of CO2, which is equivalent to the European Union countries' combined emissions over 10 years. And so the degradation of this environment would lead to part of the CO2 to be released in the air. And finally, for the social index, we consider the unemployment rate linked with the direct and indirect employment that the industry could bring. We also considered how a higher HDI could result in a lower risk of exploitation for the population. Also, the overlap with the most highly populated areas in DRC, and with the Pygmies indigenous territories in the country, so which is a minority which already suffer a discrimination and whose situation could be only worsened by the presence of the fossil fuel industry. And the last element for the social index was the presence of the local critical natural assets, which are defined as areas with the presence of nature's contribution to people, which are a series of indicators whose combined presence defines areas essential for the provision of crucial ecosystem services. So with all of this, we did through the multi-criteria decision analysis, and the result of the analysis reveals a strong divergence between the three indicators. Here you can see, especially in the central region of the country, where despite a good economic index, the production seems to be ill-advised from a social and environmental point of view. While in contrast, in the coastal region, in the smaller map, you can see that the three indices seems to have all a rather good score. These for the onshore oil blocks, while for the offshore oil blocks, we can see something similar with discrepancies between the economic index and the other two, both in the blocks located in the Lake Tanganyika, so on the eastern side, and also on the oceanic coastal block, which, by the way, is one of those currently exploited. Finally, based on the results that I just show you, and using the unburnable carbon quotas identified by Wellesby and his colleague for Africa, we were able to define unburnable carbon areas for those blocks for which we have estimates of oil and gas reserves. So this is for the oil blocks, while this is the final result for the three gas blocks located in Lake Kivu. So in conclusion, I just would like to mention the fact that the 2022 bid round was marked by a very low participation, and that after several postponements of the submission deadline in October of this year, the government cancelled it due to the lack of interest from foreign investors, as well as several irregularities, underlying, however, the willingness to launch a new bid round very soon. And finally, now, while this research targets DRC's fossil fuel potential, I think it's also worth mentioning how the DRC is among the main producers of several key minerals and cobalt, above all, related to and needed for the green transition. And this extraction is in part done through inhuman labor systems. Thus, while this research highlights the need for a urgent fossil fuel phase out, I think it's also wishes to insert itself into a deeper human right-based reflection on our current and future development models. So thank you very much for your attention, and I give you back the floor. Thank you.
Thanks, Emanuele, for your contribution, especially because it is very useful to use map to imagine changes before thinking or applying a concrete action. And now I let the floor to Matilde Gingembre. She shared with us some reflection on the risk in the issue of renewable energy and a process related with this of renewable grabbing. Please, Matilde, the floor is yours. Thanks to be here.
Thank you, Massimo, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this panel on just transitions for worthy lives. My name is Mathilde Gingembre. I'm an independent researcher affiliated with the University of East Anglia in the UK. And I would like to share my screen. Are you seeing my PowerPoint? Can you see my PowerPoint? Is it coming up okay? Great. Okay, so yeah, my paper is titled Land Just Transition, Citizen Opposition to Renewable Grabbing in the EU. And it aims to critically engage with the EU's ambitious energy transition within the broader framework of just a transition and citizens' rights, and also to advocate for a shift in our understanding of citizen opposition to renewable energy projects. So in terms of context, sorry, I don't seem to be able to move this slide. There you go. As we know, the EU is pledged to reach carbon neutrality by 2050, and to get there is pledged to achieve a 55% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 compared to 1990. And this ambitious Fit for 55 policy is putting pressure on member states to accelerate their production of renewable energy, which is translating into legislative reforms, such as the one that was voted in France last year, called Law 2023-175 for the acceleration of the production of renewable energies, and which aims to simplify regulatory processes in order to fast track the implementation of renewable energy projects. So while this is obviously commendable, it's important to look at how these accelerating planning processes can impact citizens, particularly regarding the right to equitable access to land. And this is precisely what I intend to do in the context of the Just Landing project, which I've designed recently and which I'm planning to carry out with under the supervision of Professor De Marchi at the University of Padova. So this project introduces the concept of land just transition to put the land question to the fore of conversations around equitable decarbonization pathways. Because in the way we design and implement our green transitions, we seem to ignore the global context of competition for land that is unfolding at the global level. Whereas you know, there's been a decline in media and academic interest, but the global land rush that gained momentum in the wake of the 2008-2009 crisis is still very much alive. So, as we know, climate and environmental agendas are driving the global land rush as more and more areas of land are enclosed for conservation purposes and carbon capture mechanism. This is a picture of a large-scale biofuel plantation in a pastoral area of southern Madagascar. But, there's also the large-scale protected areas, REDD mechanisms, large-scale tree planting for carbon markets, etc. And when these projects are ill-designed, they can lead to adverse impacts in terms of loss of local land access, hindrances to land-based livelihoods, sometimes large-scale displacements of population, and even adverse environmental impacts, even though these projects are carried under the guise of sustainability. So the concept of green grabbing points to these phenomena with different meanings assigned to this concept, from the scholars who say it should be kept for the processes where there are actually violent evictions of populations, and others who say that this is a useful concept to point to the power asymmetries that facilitate and accelerate dispossessions on the ground. But in any case, much of the research is focused on the global south, where the speed and the magnitude of these large-scale land acquisitions is particularly pronounced. However, it is increasingly recognized that similar dynamics are occurring inside the EU, which is also witnessing a surge in land investment and concerning trends of land concentration. Of course, in the EU, people are better protected by law, land rights are more formalized, people have a better knowledge of their own social and political rights. But first of all, that doesn't mean the continent is spared from all the environmental injustices related to green transitions, as we see more and more mining projects with the extraction of minerals developing on European soils. But also as far as access to land is concerned, even if we don't witness large-scale population displacements, it's important to remember that it's not only force or extra economic coercion that drives local exclusion from land. And as Derek Hall, Philip Hirsch, and Tanya Lee remind us, powers of exclusion are driven by a combination of force sometimes, but also legitimation, so green credential, regulation, like the law I mentioned, and the market. And this is a big factor, obviously, in a context where approaches to green transitions are very much market-led, which produces rising land values all across the continent, making it difficult for ordinary citizens and small farmers to compete in the face of corporate investment in land. So we see a lot of farms being bought off by big energy companies to develop large-scale photovoltaic or wind farms projects. So I believe this context is important to keep in mind when we look at citizen opposition to renewable energy planning, because of course, we currently live in an era where there is a worrying backlash against environmental regulation driven by political elites, far-right parties, and climato-skeptics. But until recently, what the studies of social acceptance of the energy transitions were showing was that there was on the global level, there was overall a strong support for the energy transition, but that global level was clashing with resistance on the ground at the local level. So what's interesting is in these studies is that they challenged the NIMBY framework, not in my backyard, which attributes these movements of resistance to selfish interests, and instead they show the wide range of concern and values that drive these opposition, including global concerns for biodiversity, food security, and also more local consequences related to landscape integrity, local livelihoods, community well-being, etc. And what I believe is also important to see in these movements is what they say about the unequal distribution of the environmental efforts across space and society, you know, especially with our rural areas bearing the brunt of the effort of green transitions. And the other one, I think, what is often expressed as well is a disagreement over the validity of mainstream strategies to combat climate breakdown. And this is why I adopt a conflict transformation approach in my project to look at citizen opposition to renewable energy projects as potential constructive forces of proposition rather than only obstacle and conflicts that we need to overcome at all costs. So when, you know, they're grounded in alternative frameworks such as degrowth, agroecology, food sovereignty, grassroots initiative point to different pathways of transition and pathway towards sustainability that depart from profit-driven capitalist approaches and all the extractive and exploitative patterns that come with them. I don't know if I have any time left, Massimo, but this is, in case I'm running out of time, my case study will be on southwestern France, in the GIS department, which is interesting because it's an agricultural region. 70% of its land is dedicated to agriculture, but it's also a region that's part of the Occitanie, a broader Occitanie region, which aims to be the first positive energy region in Europe. So there's a lot of projects, photovoltaic, also agrivoltaism, wind farms that are being developed. And there's also a big resistance to these projects that's being organized by interesting coalition of different actors. And so I will be focusing both on the top-down processes and bottom-up responses. So we'll look at the local governance of renewable energy planning processes, in particular to test the hypothesis that made by the French government and others that decentralizing renewable energy planning will support more inclusive participatory processes. And then I will look at the way the discourses and the repertoires of action with which citizens respond to these accelerated planning processes, with a focus on discourses of land justice. So to conclude, I believe that, you know, as the EU and the member states are adjusting their legislative framework to accelerate the development of renewable energy, it's essential to evaluate the space that is given to claims of injustice in renewable energy planning processes. And I propose to specifically focus on the disagreement expressed regarding land use, land access, and land control, a topic that has been overlooked so far in discussions around just transitions. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks. Thanks, Matilde, for your contribution, because this opened an important reflection on the process of land accumulation and expropriation through the discourse of green transition. Many thanks. Now I let the floor to Daniele Vezzelli. He is doing the PhD research on the issue of non-proliferation, abandonment of fossil fuel. He analyzed a case in Italy, one of the few cases in the world in which Italy defined a plan when to abandon fossil fuel. The only problem in the plan, when it was planned, it was prepared, it was not able to keep the novelty of policies, but I don't want to spoiler the presentation of Daniele. So I let the floor to Daniele because this is other interesting contribution. Please, Daniele, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Massimo, for the introduction. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks. So good afternoon to everybody. Professor De Marchi has already introduced me, so I will go straight to the point. Well, with this contribution, we would like to explore the case of PiTESAI and more in general, a just transition plan from fossil fuels under a climate justice perspective. So in this presentation, we will see first an introduction to what PiTESAI is, the third sentence that cancelled it, some key observation from the strategic environmental assessment from which we can draw some elements for the proposal of a new plan, the mapping of the actors of this process, a focus on Italy's international policies on a just transition from fossil fuels, and then some elements, some proposals for imagining a new plan. So the PiTESAI, the translation basically is a plan for a sustainable energy transition of suitable areas. And this plan basically was made to identify suitable areas for research and production activities of hydrocarbons in order in order to enhance environmental, social, and economic sustainability. And this plan was based on a system of criteria, geographical criteria, in order to identify these areas. There's a lot I can say about this plan, but I will go straight to the point. This was a first attempt to regulate from a territorial point of view oil and gas activities, upstream activities, but in 2024, in February this year, the PiTESAI was annulled by the TAR, which is the Lazio Regional Administrative Court, after the appeals submitted by oil and gas company and related associations. And this left a huge gap, a huge deregulation for upstream activities, and gave a lot of space for new permits in Italy. We are now seeing the new decree environment that is discussed in Parliament. I think is a step back from what the PiTESAI was. But there is an urgent need to develop a new plan to meet climate targets and this just transition. And this is particularly true as we see that based on an extractable carbon budget proposed by WESB, Italian gas production could last almost 5 years instead of 11 at current production rates, and 7 years instead of 18. So it's interesting to observe, to look at the observation of the old PiTESAI in order to draw some elements for a new plan. The old PiTESAI lacked a real exit plan. There was no a clear roadmap for reducing these activities, and also there was it was contemplated new permits, exploration permits were contemplated, a limited involvement of local actors, and also a lack of integration with global policies, discussion on out of fossil fuels, discussion on the concept of unburnable carbon, of a carbon budget, and climate justice in general. So it is interesting to look at the territorial scale, the actors involved in the process. We see, of course, in this presentation, we will look more at the observation related to a just transition from fossil fuels and climate policies in general. Regarding this, we see that 79 actors out of 123 explicitly call for moratoria or stop of any new oil and gas concessions in their territories. We see some clusters of this observation in Basilicata, which is the key oil producing region of Italy, but also in the area of Po River Delta. And from this, we can understand that this area in particular require dedicated just transition plans that account for their specific challenges, subsidence and ecosystem restoration, for example, for the Adriatic, especially for River Delta, or a just transition, for example, from workers in Basilicata. This is for the territorial part. A new plan, one limit of PiTESAI was that it was too focused on only Italy. A new plan may need a more global vision, multi-scale reflection, as Italian production is only a minimal part of the global production. We see that is only the 0.1% of global production. So we need to question the role of Italy in the international policies. So a new plan may require including the principle of a fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty, non-proliferation of new activities in order to remain, to stay within the 1.5 target. Global disarmament means stopping gradually reducing and then phase out the existing production activities, and then a peaceful transition for especially global peaceful transition, developed countries supporting poorer countries. A new plan may also need to integrate further tools, supply side tools, not only limiting to, from a territorial point of view, to reshape the concession or prohibiting development of specific resources, as was oil for PiTESAI, but also look at the international scale with policies to restrict, for example, export credit agency investments on fossil fuel projects abroad. And this particular point is very critical for Italy. Italy was one of the signatories of the Clean Energy Transition Partnership, which was the first commitment to end public support for oil and gas and coal. Italy was one of the signatories, but it is still off track for the aims of this commitment. We see that SACE, which is Italy's export credit agency, continue to finance fossil fuel projects abroad. And for the past year, Italy has approved 1 billion in fossil fuel finance, SACE, and additional 4 billion in support of petrochemical projects. And this is very important because the public finance institution provide money that the risk the fossil fuel project abroad, and this attracts private capital, perpetuating carbon lock-in, especially in global south countries. So to sum up, the main element of new just transition plan for Italy must be a multi-scale plan focusing first on local and territorial scale, with specific just transition plan for sacrifice zones, with inclusive participation of key actors. A new PiTESAI should be aligned with the 1.5 target, so it must include the no new projects, a no new projects policy as recommended by the International Energy Agency, defining clear timeline for the phase out of hydrocarbon extraction, and then also focusing on an international scale, committing to end international public support for oil and gas and coal projects. So concluding, The PiTESAI case in this presentation was an example, a case study to highlight the importance of territorial planning to phase out fossil fuel production, and how this should be guided by studies on unburnable carbon and the principle of fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. In the current context, with this, let's say, the regulation in Italy, there is the need of a new plan for regulating these activities, but at multiple scale, not only at territorial scale, in national scale. And these policies must be conducted with the support also of good planning from a demand side of the energy transition. And then one idea for future research may be an atlas of fossil fuel projects financed by the Italian public finance institution in order to document the spatial dimension of these projects and how these impact ecological, sociocultural, and human rights sphere. And thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Daniele, for this reflection, especially because it presents an interesting case study. Italy has a production of oil, but is very small in the international context. But Italy has, at the same time, investment on oil operation in many parts of the world. So in case of reflecting from fossil fuel transition, your perspective of analyzing these three scale, local, national, international, is very useful in a geographical perspective of transition. Many thanks. Now our geographical trip, we start from Congo, then we moved through Europe to arrive in Italy. Now we move to Mexico. And Fateme Bostani share with us a big project, the Tren Maya, with many social environmental implications. At the same time, Tren Maya is a sort of label of something new, green, and development. So please, the floor is yours, Fateme. You can start your presentation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Fateme Bustani, and I'm a student at the University of Padova, and I'm doing an internship with Professor De Marchi. And my topic is Tren Maya, an economic booster or an environmental and social disaster. First of all, let's have some small general information about the Tren Maya. This project is a large-scale railway infrastructure in southeast of Mexico. It includes 1,554 kilometer railways, which connect 5 states in this area. And the goal of this project is to improve the economical situation of the area by developing the tourist industry. You can imagine that this kind of project with this scale have many consequences, and especially this project because it's located in the area that is very rich in biodiversity. So this project has many environmental consequences. First of all, deforestation. They have already cut like more than 9 million trees in the area, and also impact on biodiversity, also the habitat destruction, and the treat unprotected area because this project affect at least 20 protected area in this region. And also, of course, it will increase the pollution in the area. Also, this project have social impacts because the people in this area have to relocate because of building this infrastructure. Also, this project have caused some problems for people, indigenous people who live there. They're worried about the cultural erosion and the loss of their identity because of increasing the number of tourists in the area. Also, this project is increasing the social conflicts because some people are against this project, and also there are some problem with the energy. On the other hand, this project have some economical impacts. It will increase the energy demand in the area, and also this project has a high financial cost, and at the same time, there's no certainty of the profitability of this project. At the same time, it will increase the debt and also affect the economic sustainability of this area. But generally, Mexico is facing an energy crisis because, first of all, it depends on the fossil fuel, and a big part of the country's electricity is relied on the using fossil fuels to be produced, and also there is a pressure on the current infrastructure because the energy demand is increasing, and this pressure will cause the blackout and the energy insecurity in the country. Also, the country is trying to shift to renewable energy, but the efforts is not sufficient at all, and unfortunately, the government some policies support more the companies that invest on the fossil fuel energy and not renewable energy. So there's lack of investment in this sector. Here you can see the Mexico's power sectors from 2000 to 2023, and clearly the part of the gas is more than other source of power, and the renewable energy has the very little part, and also you can see the increasing the demand of energy during these 23 years, which is almost doubled. And also you can see that the use and relying on this non-renewable energy caused the huge amount of CO2 emission during these years. All of this, as I said, is because the government is trying to produce more energy generation, but most of them are relied on fossil fuels and not renewable energy, and there is not sufficient investment in the energy sector. And currently, around 1.5 million people in Mexico do not have access to electricity, and especially in most of the rural areas, it's not possible to access the affordable and reliable source of energy. Here in this map, you can see that only in our study area, the number of localities without access to electricity, which is, I think, really notable. Now, how do we connect the Tren Maya and the energy problem in Mexico? First of all, the increasing of energy demand, because the construction and operation of this train and railway will need a lot of energy, and this will again put pressure on the existing infrastructure in the area. So this will affect the energy problems in the region. Also, from the sustainability point of view, this project needs a lot of source of energy, and as when it's not coming from the renewable energy, it will increase the dependence of the country on the non-renewable energy. And also it will have the local impact because there, as I said, there is not enough source of energy in this area, and this increasing the energy demand will cause the competition for energy, and that will also cause the conflict in the area. Now about my study project. It's about the environmental and social impact of Tren Maya project, and it includes the analyzing the environmental impact assessment, which is provided from the government of Mexico, and we're using a quantitative approach to conduct this study, and we're gonna prepare a sensitivity map and area of influence map using the GIS environment, and also we're gonna have the interviews with specialists who are living in this area and are aware.
Chissà che parola improbabile sparerò in inglese. Come ho fatto prima.
Sorry. So the objective of our project is to conducting a detailed research to be able to evaluate the significance of the impact, and also be able to discuss the mitigation methods. And we are going to product a sensitivity map and sensitivity scenarios of the elements that are going to be affected by this project. This study is still ongoing, so we already collect and analyze the data related to environmental, social, economical, and energy aspects of this project, and using the GIS environment. And we're going to have semi-structured interviews with the specialists in the area. And also we are conducting a multi-criteria decision analysis to be able to provide the sensitivities scenarios. And our perspective is to, by doing this research and evaluating various scenarios and using multi-criteria approach, we're gonna expect to be able to visualize the potential real local impact of this project from different dimensions and a broad scale. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Fatemi, for your presentation. I think we are able to frame the complexity of a big project. From one side, a new infrastructure requiring energy, and at the same time a context with energy poverty and energy exclusion. And this issue of apparently it look a green project with transition from a new way of transportation, etc. But the implication of the program is very high, and so it's very interesting to study what is happening. Now we continue with our geographical trip. We go to Amazon rainforest with Francesco Facchinelli. Francesco is here in Firenze, Florence in English, and this conference is dual, partly in presence and partly online. Please, Francesco, the floor is yours. You can enter in the issue of Amazon rainforest.
Thank you, Massimo. Just a moment that I share my screen. And here we go. Okay. Okay. Hello, everybody. I am Francesco Facchinelli, and I'm here to speak tell you about the agroecological multitudes and their role in overcoming the geographies of extractivist sacrifice in the Ecuadorian Amazon region. First thing first, something about the Ecuadorian Amazon region. It's one of the most biodiverse areas within the Amazon rainforest and probably in the world. In this map, in the study of 2010, it's in this part here where we have a maximum for 4 taxa of biodiversity. And despite that, over the years, we had many different territorialities which overlapped. We have on one side the conservation of such biological value and diversity, but we have also indigenous territories, and especially we have oil blocks since the 70s, and expanding oil frontiers, which is not giving science to stop until now. And in this frame, very recently, Ecuador voted for held an historical referendum, which declared in which the population decided to leave oil in the ground within the Yasuni-ITT area. This was in order to protect both biodiversity and indigenous population living in voluntary isolation. This was the result of a very long path, which may start with the first contact of the indigenous population. In the 67, we had the oil discovery. I make some jumps to take only the most useful things. In 2008, we had a new constitution which declared the rights of nature, and the beginning of the Yasuni-ITT initiative. Then, from a socialist government, which then, after 5 years, don't being able to get the compensation from the international community that they wanted, they decided to leave the project, and in 2016 the extraction started. In the middle of this, a very large movement of associations led from the Yasunidos movement asked for a referendum in the moment in which the president declared the end of the Yasuni-ITT initiative. They asked for a referendum asking it to leave oil in the ground anyway in the Yasuni. This referendum needed about 9 years to be carried on due to a strong resistance that it found from the institutional and political, well, the institutional part of the political world in Ecuador, as almost all the governments that passed by the years obstructed this process. In 2023, a legal court declared that the referendum should be held, and in the end it was won. Despite that, now it's necessary to monitor its implementation. And I mention this because it is interesting by the point of view in which it represents the desire and the need for Ecuadorian population to go beyond extractivism, and which, despite it being one of the main sources of income within the country. I already mentioned, well, extractivism anyway has many forms within the Ecuadorian Amazon region. The first, as I already mentioned, it's oil. It has, well, in this map from Codato et al., we see how most of the Ecuadorian Amazon area is actually covered from oil blocks. We have 67,000 square kilometers, and that is 67,000 kilometers encompass 20% about of the protected area within the Ecuadorian Amazon region, and 70% of the formally recognized indigenous territories. And of course, over 60 years of oil extraction, there was a wide set of environmental impacts and environmental conflicts associated with that. Now, the oil reserves are coming almost to an end, and the government now it's changing the shape basically of extractivism. Specifically, we have in the south of the Amazonian region the Mirador project, which is done on shore land, and anyway. But anyway, we can see that the mining process is distributed, it's spread around the whole Amazon region, as shown in this map from map biomas. And it amounts to about 7,500 hectares until now. Then we have another emerging issue, which is oil palm. Until well, right now there are 120,000, sorry, hectares which are being grabbed from oil palm, and this amount is the result of 5-pair multiplication over 20 years of the cultivated area. So, and then we have another emerging issue which regards the green colonialism, actually, which Matilde mentioned before. There is a huge debate within Ecuador regarding the RED Plus and the Socio-Bosque programs. The Socio-Bosque program, it's the actualization of from the Ecuadorian government of the RED Plus scheme, and what, for instance, Moreano notes is that this idea of pure conservation, in which local communities cannot use the land and should take care in place of the northern people, which continue to pollute and to cause, in this case, climate changing emission. It's a perpetuation of the same capitalist system, and with the addition that it gives and the risk to dispossess local communities from their lands. In this frame, it's interesting also to take a look at the document produced from the Asamblea del Feminismo Comunitario of the South America, in which they actually say and put in right that the logic beyond this kind of processes, in which the bad guys from the north will pay the good guys from the south to repair their damage, cannot work, because what they ask it's to produce collective processes in which there is care, instead of giving the responsibility to care only to some people. So another a bit of a theoretical approach within Latin America. There have been historically two main kinds of processes of extractivism, which regard on one side the so-called classic extractivism carried on from right. Okay, I am short on time, so I will go on. What I wanted to share at this point, well, the issue is that both kind of extractivism carried on both from the right and from the left imply the sacrifice of some areas and of some populations. This is treated very well in a paper which connects the sacrifice geographies, where there is which are the one that carry on the impact of extractive activities, and hope geographies. So all that movements, territorialized movements, which are trying to create alternatives. In this, agroecology, I think that can give an important contribution, also on a theoretical point of view. In this, in this discourse, until now, we can see three different approaches to territorial development: the basic conservation, the extractivism, and the agroecology. But actually, conservation and extractivism can be seen as two faces of the same coin, because it's a very common strategy to divide between territories to conserve and the territories where you can extract. Instead, agroecology is based on the concept coined from Yvette Perfecto of natural matrix, in which there is complementarity between human activities and the nature. And here we come to the concept of agroecological multitudes. So the idea of a wide set, a multitude of small territorialized experiences which try to create those geographies of hope that I was saying before. In the Ecuadorian Amazon region, this is partly, what to say, it's partly inherited in the sense that we have indigenous agroecology, we have the chakra from the Quichua, we have the Aja from the Shuar, we have agroforestry. In a recent project that we made, we found that actually when the indigenous people were Wauran indigenous people were mapping the resources of their territory, there were a lot of trees and of particular areas which include agroforestal use of the resources. But we have also some kind of more organized and more structured way, which come from a variety of organizations. We have anti-oil grassroots movements that are starting to develop agroecological initiatives. We have indigenous organizations which are including agroecology within their programs and ideas. We have campesinos communities which are fighting against oil extraction, also because oil extraction isn't allowing them anymore to carry on the biological agriculture activities, which is a low level of agroecology, of course. But anyway, those people were relying on it, and due to the starting of oil extraction, are no more able to carry it on. We have environmentalist organizations, NGOs such as the Scientific Panel for the Amazon. And I am short in time, very short in. Okay, so I go to the end. I just wanted to give like a panoramic view in order to connect the thing that to connect agroecological practices and anti-extractivist mobilization. A process which actually it's already being carried on from grassroots movements in the Ecuadorian Amazon. Thank you.
Thanks, Francesco, for sharing this reflection and these practices on Amazonic forest of Ecuador, in which agroecology become a way of a geography of hope to exit the hell of the extractivism of fossil fuel. Now we move to the next contribution. Again, in our geographical travel, we come back to the city of Padova with Abdullah Mahdi. He is doing an analysis of the potentialities of the roof in Padova in terms of green roof from one side and food production and eventually energy production. I think this is an interesting reflection because it helps us in looking for space not considered, especially inside the fight, the challenges of cities. A couple of days ago, we presented in Italy, it was presented the annual report on soil consumption. And so I think this is very important contribution in considering how cities is increasing the transformation of soil from living soil to dead soil. Please, Abdullah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor De Marchi. Good afternoon, everybody. A moment.
Share your screen. Here. Try to see if everything it works. I will launch the presentation.
Can you see the first page?
We can see the presentation, but not in the form of a presentation, but as you see the presentation in your computer. Please share the presentation way.
Now?
Okay, perfect, Abdullah.
Okay. Sorry. My name is Abdullah, and I'm a master degree student at the University of Padova, and I'm working on this project. Thank you for the introduction, Professor De Marchi, and my main supervisor is Professor De Marchi, and I'm working with Professor Daniele Curato. Thank you. And how is it working? Or yeah. So as the professor yes introduced, the topic is in Padova, and as also we see in all parts of the world, especially in Europe, that urban growth is a very hot topic, which is growing every year, and this results in a phenomenon which is called urban heat island, that we have a pronounced difference of temperature between urban area and also its rural surroundings. And that's why that we focus on these studies. In Padova, there have been some studies that they showed that there is a pronounced difference of up to 7 degrees Celsius between urban and rural areas. So, of course, there have been some mitigation strategies, like, for example, green spaces and also reflective materials that is going to be explored. But none of them have been studied or explored that there is also, for example, a rooftop intervention that mainly we are going to focus and is the main topic of our research. So the study is Padova, as you see in the map here, the northeast of the Padova, close to Venezia. And the Padova, the study area that I'm going to study is the surface almost like 93 square kilometer, and with a population of 2016.366 residents, according to the Italian Statistics Institute 2024. And as I did myself Korean land core analysis from 2017 to 2024, we see a solid growth of 4% increase in urban areas, which is you see in the table, for example, in the map, you see that the whole red area, which is all urban area, and the percentage is almost 73%, which is a very big percentage. So the problem statement is we say this, the urban head island and how we are going to mitigate the urban head island. As we say, the ground level green infrastructure options have been explored and studied, but rooftop intervention is not that explored, especially in the context of Italy and Padova. And with this study, we are going to focus and study the rooftop spaces and places available for how to mitigate urban heat island and also provide agroecology, implement agroecology practices that help from other parts, for example, like helping biodiversity and also food sovereignty and other ecosystem services, urban ecosystem services. And research objectives that we started with our thesis was evaluate the potential of green roofs and photovoltaic installation in the Padova city with the help of GIS, open source GIS, QGIS modeling, and investigate the role of rooftop green infrastructure, that how to mitigate urban heat island, and also focus on the other side, that how we can help to mitigate and analyze the carbon sequestration capacity. And with all this, we're going to support climate justice because of the city with different kind of age structure, population density, with income background, migration background, and how we are going to support the urban head, how to help the urban head island and support the people in the city. And finally, explore the integration of rooftop agroecology to enhance the urban resilience with food production, food sovereignty. So my methodology includes using open source data, from LiDAR data, DM models, and Landsat and Sentinel models, Daniels uncover, and also image for the basement and area of interest with the help of QGIS, Google Earth Engine, and RCD for all the analysis. And the main and core of the analysis is to extract the rooftop structures according to the slope and according to their orientation and building aspects, that they have to provide the suitable rooftops, which is suitable for different types of green interventions and solar photovoltaic interventions that I just divided like 3 parts here, as you see, 1 to 5 degrees, which is suitable for, which is flat roof, which is suitable for agroecology, and also intensive rooftop, and 5 to 15 degrees here, for example, moderate solar roofs, which is suitable for extensive green rooftops, and 15 to 30 degrees, which is steep solar roofs. The last part of our categorization, which is mainly suitable for our photovoltaic solar installation. And here, the map of our slope analysis, aspect analysis, we see that south-facing buildings, they are mainly suitable for the context of Padova in north part of the hemisphere. And we concluded that, yeah, buildings facing toward the southwest are mainly also for green roofs and also for photovoltaic installation. So the results of my thesis so far, I discovered a total area of almost 10 kilometers suitable for green interventions, both agroecology, green roofing, and also photovoltaic installation. And the first part we see, for example, almost 4 kilometers is for flat roof, and 4.7 kilometers for heap roof, and 1 kilometer, almost 2 kilometers for steep roof, and the total is almost 10 kilometers. And the first map, you see flat roofs, the spatial distribution for the whole area, and we see a lot of, for example, great amount of flat roofs suitable for our first analysis, which was for intensive green roofs and agroecology. In the second, you see the heap roof, and also the steep roofs, spatial distribution, which is mainly concentrated in the main city center. And some analysis from NDVI and NDVI that I just looked into to see how the correlation is working with the distribution of vegetation and distribution of building. For example, normalized difference built-up area, we see that the red area is mainly built-up areas, the urban area, and the green is the vegetation, non-urban area, which is mean, of course, vegetation. And also in the way we see that they are perfectly correlated, and it shows that how, and also how the distribution of built-up areas, which is causing the urban heat island, and also how less, or for example, Lidl, we have green distribution of healthy vegetation. So the result of this two could be an urban heat island map that you see in the right map, which is figure number 13. We see that the city is very, very good distributing with the urban head island map. For example, we have a great amount that we saw in current land cover, almost 73%, which is a very big percentage. And we have to intervene this part, which is not used for the green infrastructure, and we have to use this rooftop with the rooftop to help the green, to help the mitigate the urban head island in the city, and also the other uses. And the last map, which is the slope analysis, showing the green again, the south-facing buildings, which is suitable for our study, like photovoltaic installation. I'm just a little bit bored and not run out of time. So the results, as I said, that is in a progress research. The final results that I'm looking forward is, of course, the urban head island mitigation potential. That with this, we are going to support climate justice, the people, different type of people with their age structure, with their economic situation, and also migration background. And agroecological outcomes, that how you can implement rooftop agroecology, how we can produce foods with 0 kilometer food production, for example, and also organic foods for the city of the Padova, and carbon sequestration capacity. And finally, comprehensive priority analysis of green roofs in the city. And of course, we have a very interesting policy planning and implication, because our study is not only aligned with 1 or 2 United Nations Development Goals Agenda 2013, but it's with 1 or, for example, goal number 2, zero hunger, goal number 3, 9, 10, 11, 13, and 15, which is very interesting and very interdisciplinary. And from this point also, we can suggest for the local government, like municipal of Padova, how they can implement. And yeah, last concluding part. So regarding the summary of the findings, we discovered almost 10 kilometers for green interventions, and the finding, of course, is very positive that we have great amount for green sustainable intervention in the Padova, and our finding is aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals of 2013, the United Nations. And some limitations, of course, is common for all the GIS and level sensing analysis that we face with lack of high-resolution data, and also especially with if you're dealing with buildings, we don't have enough information, especially precise and updated information about the Padova, especially, for example, that we are dealing. And if you could find this information about the height of the buildings, about the age, about the use, it would be very, very helpful and also time-saving for further analysis or future research. And what we can suggest for future research direction is that it could be incorporated with detailed rooftop logistic analysis and structure analysis. That also could incorporate a very comprehensive economic feasibility assessment that could help and complement our research. And that's all for me. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Abdullah, for sharing this research in progress to open a view in what can be the possibilities of cities, considering that the main preoccupation normally in cities is the expansion of new buildings. And so the idea here is to understand how we can take some new kind of opportunities from the existing building, looking for roof in terms of energy, of greening or food production. Thanks. Now we move to the next contribution. It is a contribution on the role of technology in Clim-activism and the idea of involving people and creating and sharing knowledge in terms of action or for change. We let the floor to Letizia Caroscio from University of Bologna and Chiara Ricciardi from University of Torino. They share with us this idea of a collaborative platform. Please, Letizia and Chiara, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for the opportunity of this presentation. I'm Letizia Caroscio, PhD student in environmental engineering from University of Bologna. And together with me is my colleague Chiara Riccardi, research and biologist at Tenea Research Center. Together, we are presenting a collective work connecting clim-activist practices, a collaborative platform for mapping urban Thailand. The project proposed an open source platform to map urban Thailand, involving citizens, scientists, and activists. Through the use of sensors, satellite data, and community contribution, it promotes tools for social and environmental justice by offering predictive models for cities with less concrete and much more green in a hybrid of nature and city. Basically, our project was born out of the need to bridge two crucial dimensions, science and activism. We call it climate activism project because it goes beyond just data analysis or academics, but brings together claims with different skills and background. It is about empowering communities with scientifically grounded tools to drive political claims and demand systemic change. This initiative took shape in particular in Bologna, thanks to Reclaim the Tech Festival, and thanks to the collaboration between activists, associations, PhD students, and researchers from different Italian cities. The primary goal is to address the phenomenon of urban Thailand, one of the most clear impacts of the climate crisis in cities, through a participatory and intersectional approach. But this is not just about producing scientific knowledge. Our aim is to create tools that support political claims thanks to solid shared data. In this sense, the project is a collective action to a real change. A fundamental aspect of this project is its technological core based on open and shared data. The workflow we develop is designed to analyze the urban Thailand phenomenon in any part of the world thanks to open source tools. This approach ensures not only transparency, but also the opportunity to replicate and adapt the work in other urban contexts, aiming for a global network of collaboration. Also, the website we are developing is based on open approach. It will be designed to amplify the skills of anyone who wants to participate, offering a simple and inclusive interface to visualize data in a user-friendly mode. The project aims to integrate geospatial statistical analysis for surface temperature distribution, identifying areas that require priority mitigation operations. Yes, I leave to Chiara to go into more detail about the work.
Thank you, Letizia. Thank you all. So, urban Thailand effect poses a significant and growing threat to public health, particularly in rapid expanding urban areas that is further intensified by the ongoing climate change, and it exacerbates the heat-related illness, strain urban ecosystem, and also increase the energy demands, with far-reaching consequences for the environment, for both the environment and the economy. So this pressing challenge underscores the urgency of monitoring the urban Thailand dynamics and implementing sustainable urban planning strategies. So to this, thermal comfort is given by multiple environmental factors that are the air temperature, humidity, wind speed, solar radiation, and thermal radiation emitted by surfaces. And it can be estimated directly by ground station by measuring directly the air temperature, or also indirectly measuring the land surface temperature from the satellites. The satellites offer unparalleled advantages for studying urban Thailand. So there's a strong correlation between air temperature and land surface temperature. And also, moreover, satellites provide consistent global coverage with a long-term time series of data. This makes them ideal for characterizing the urban thermal environments with a higher precision. And so the satellite-based insights are indispensable for capturing the spatial complexity and the temporal dynamics of the urban head. In this context, we propose an open platform designed to automate the process of downloading, processing, and visualizing the urban Thailand data by leveraging the big amount of freely accessible data that are already available all over the world. This prototype uses scientific and reproducible workflow that integrates open data and technology hacking. The user only need to provide free inputs. By now, there is foresee additional customization of the process, making it a user-friendly and yet a powerful tool. The platform uses three types of data: vector data from the OpenStreetMap project, land surface temperature from the Landsat mission, and the elevation from a digital terrain model. First, it gets the data from OpenStreetMap, the administrative boundary of the city of interest, the urban areas that are all the sealed soil surfaces, and also the rural areas that are the reference area where we find the reference temperature. Then we get the digital terrain model to get the elevation information about the city under analysis, because it's been observed that as happens for the air temperature, also the land surface temperature is correlated with the elevation gradient. And so it's important to analyze altitudinal homogeneous areas. At this point, all the preprocessing steps are done, and the tool download and preprocess also the Landsat thermal band data, obtaining the land surface temperature, and then combining the LST layer with the previously obtained data. Now it calculates the reference land surface temperature, that is the mean LST of rural areas at a distance greater than 300 meters from urbanized areas and of the same altitudinal belt. And so finally it calculates the thermal anomaly intensity map, that is by how much the LST deviates from the expected temperature, showing the urban and Thailand distribution. And one of our goal is to provide evidence-based tools that guide the urban planning for green and healthier neighborhoods. For example, a principle like the 330-300 rule emphasizes the importance of green space in urban setting. And our platform offers planners the flexibility to incorporate such guidelines into actionable strategies for mitigating urban Thailand effects.
And one of the most interesting aspects is the intersectionality between science, society, and political claims. We don't limit ourselves to mapping thermal anomalies. We aim to integrate demographic data and analyze which area and population group are most affected by urban Thailand. This approach allows us to highlight climate inequalities and suggest targeted interventions to protect the most vulnerable communities. So we bridge scientific knowledge with social issue, building a model that is not only informative, but especially transformative. This is the focus of our mission, to ensure that the data and maps we produce are not just technical tools, but also drivers of climate justice. And finally, it is essential for us that the project remain open and in continuous evolution. We aim to expand a call to action involving activists, citizens, and other researchers interested in contributing. In these weeks, for example, we are thinking about an open call for programmers to implement the website. The goal is to grow the network, adding new skills, data, and perspective. Our dream is to create a collaborative platform that not only maps urban Thailand, but also becomes a reference point for climate adaptation and social environmental justice. We think it is a way to create an active scientific community that tries to have an active plan in the transformative decision of cities and communities. And thank you for this event. We are available for questions and comments, and we leave our emails here for you to stay in touch or if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Can wait for the last presentation and then we make intervention. Thanks, Chiara and Letizia, because it is very interesting to follow all these paths, how technology can contribute to the multi-level dimension, intersectionality of climate justice. Now, the last presentation, but not least, but we want to close with the contribution of Matteo Spini, because it enters in a very sensitive topics. We are living a climate emergency. We are citizens activating to change, and at the same time, the powers are reducing the action of citizens. Many thanks, Matteo, to be here, and Matteo is here from Florence, so I let the floor to Matteo.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I prepared my presentation in Italian, so I will translate right now. Yeah, I will translate from Italian to English. And also, I'm not a geographist, I'm a sociologist, so my contribution is a bit different. Perhaps you will see no maps at all. So my attempt is basically to analyze from a sociological point of view the repression against the Italian climate activism as a break to the ecological transition. Okay. So, sorry, yes, of course. No. Yes. Condividi. Ok. Ok. Sì. Okay. So, my, let's say, assumption is that ecological movements are key actors in protecting the planet because they put pressure on enterprises, governments, mass media, other social actors, and of course, public opinion. So we can see we can interpret the repression against ecological and climate movement as a strategy, as a political strategy to, let's say, slow down or stop the ecological transition. There's a study that estimates that indigenous struggles in the USA and Canada against fossil extractivism are related to 25% of the annual emission of greenhouse gases, for instance. So now I introduce two concepts from political science and sociology. The first concept is protest policing, which is the strategies and police practices that are used to control protests. And this protest policing influences the evolution of protests because it can decrease participation, but it can also, let's say, radicalize protests and even bring, let's say, a wave of indignation and solve more participation. And it can also shape the repertoire of protests, the repertoire of movements, and the way social movements organize themselves. And Della Porta and Diani differentiate between an escalated force model and a negotiated control model. So in the first model, basically the right to protest, the right to dissent is basically violated. And especially civil disobedience is not tolerated at all. In the second model, the negotiated control model, there is a kind of negotiation between security apparatus of the state and the organizers of the protest. And so in a way, they try to find a middle ground to guarantee the right to protest. And another similar concept is repression, which is basically can be defined as those attempts by individual groups, but especially by state actors, to control, limit, or prevent protest in direct or indirect forms. And we could say that repression can assume different forms of violence, from physical violence to verbal violence, economic violence, psychological, and even symbolic violence. Many times this violence is very subtle and invisible in a way. And this is an important point to analyze. So repression against climate movements. So we could say that at the beginning of let's say, the new wave of climate protests in Europe, 2018 and 2019, the overall reaction from the political establishment of the European Union was, in a way, was positive, and it led to the Green Deal, and also there was a growth of the consensus for green parties. After the COVID pandemic, we can see that especially the European Popular Party is increasingly, let's say, anti-ecologist, is increasingly skeptic toward the ecological transition, and especially we can see a growing intolerance toward some specific forms of climate protests, in specific civil disobedience. And in literature, we can make a differentiation between a positive radical flank effect and a negative radical flank effect. So I cannot go into the details, but basically the first, the positive effect says when there is a radical movement entering into the ground, it leads to a greater support for more moderate organizations. And this is happening apparently, I mean, according to Simpson et al. And according to Ostarek, in the case of the UK. But there is also a negative radical flank effect. So when a radical movement enters into the ground, it leads to repression, which basically repression can be generalized against all forms of activism or of climate activism, which is our case. And so the Italian case, so when we discuss the topic of repression against social movements, it's always important to start from Val di Susa and other, let's say, territories in struggle, because they have been, according to authors such as Imperatore, let's say, laboratories of criminalization of activists. And from these, let's say, laboratories, we can see that some techniques of repression have been generalized, especially with the current government. There is a generalized repression against different forms of activism, student movements, movements for housing, ecological movement, trade unions, movements against great infrastructure projects. And now we'll focus on some aspects. Well, this repression against climate activism can be seen as a part of a more general, let's say, authoritarian project, but I think we can we can skip this part. And an important point that is analyzed in the literature, but also in some of the interviews that I was able to conduct, is that the unconditional support from the government to the security apparatus is something that legitimates institutional violence conducted by this security apparatus. And this is very important. This unconditional support is done through discourses and through legal norms. And also, I would add an important point of discussion, that this repression as a communicative goal is in a way to demonstrate that the government is defending, let's say, the interests of the fossil machine, and also to demonstrate that is reestablishing, let's say, public order in front of its constituencies. And now I will enter into some details of the techniques of repression, and this is, let's say, the empirical part that I'm developing, a kind of typology. We can make a differentiation between 5 kinds of techniques. Legal techniques, which are, let's say, ad hoc legal norms that are made to prevent and punish some actions conducted by climate activists, especially civil disobedience. Judicial techniques, which are basically investigation and trials. And in this case, it's also important what the activists suggest, that at the end, the effective condemnation, the final judgment, is not so relevant. The trial per se is a process that subtracts resources, time, and energy from movements. Police techniques, such as surveillance, the use of force, and also more subtle ways to restrict protests, which are also specific of Italy, so the daspo urbano, fogli di via, and also, I mean, other forms that are basically used to prevent and to obstacle protests. And then we have economic techniques, basically economic sanctions against activists for specific crimes, let's say, that also have a repercussion on their private lives. And this is an important point of view, because repression is not only against, let's say, the public actions that activists do, but also is directed, I mean, it has an implication in their private lives. And this is very important in sociological terms. And finally, discursive techniques, and so such discourses that in a way delegitimate social movements by representing them as childish, as criminals, as pathological, or by silencing their voices. And these discourses are very important because they legitimate other forms of repression. So if, for instance, if I consider these activists as criminals rather than activists, I legitimate a police intervention, and so I shift the conflict from the political sphere to the judicial sphere, for instance. And how much time? Okay. So going to some of the conclusions, and this is research I'm still conducting. We can see that we could say that in Italy we are going back in this moment to an escalated force model of public order management, meaning that the freedom to protest is frequently violated through different techniques. Civil disobedience is totally not tolerated. and now especially with the new security law, the so-called DDL sicurezza, let's say that there is a specific repression against these forms of civil disobedience, such as blocking roads and so on. And there is a frequent unproportionate use of force in demonstrations, okay? And an important point of view that I want to explore further is that the implications, the consequences that repression has on the private lives of activists that are in many cases forced to lose their job, to change city, to end some social relations and to live to live with fear. For instance, an activist told me that is constantly fearing that is surveilled by police, and so he's constantly looking around and so on and so forth. And so this is an important point because here repression tries to prevent and block activist actions, but also it has implication in daily lives, in the daily life of people. To conclude on a more positive part, we could say that, I mean, according to the literature on social movements, movements are also quite able to adapt their organization, their protest repertoire, and also repression, perhaps in this moment, is weakening social movements, but it can also be counterproductive for the power, because it can bring indignation and solidarity among movements. For instance, in this moment, there is a wide network of movements, associations, even political parties that is trying to block the DDL Sicurezza, the new security law. So at least we can see that there is a, let's say, a solidarity network between different actors that in a way can be something interesting to study for the future, and something that could produce consequences in the future. And here basically the bibliography that I'm using, mainly from sociology and political science. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Matteo, especially to share these important element of what happened in many parts of the world. It is a form to try to delay the change or to block the change. It is very interesting to understand how movement can adapt and how can be the threshold of indignation and acceptation. I think it is a very important element. I let the floor here because there is a question, I think, on the presentation of Chiara and Letizia.
Yes. Parlo da qua. Okay. Yeah, I have two questions for the last two presentations. Funziona? Oh, okay. No, so I lost. What's the name of the open source tool, and is it already available? And then the question was, the technical question was, what is the word degradation? There is a resolution. So is it the one from the satellite image? I didn't get that part, and I work on that stuff, and it sounds super interesting. And for the last presentation, in one of your slides, you were saying return to escalate. Yeah, what do you mean by return? So there was, which historical period are you referring to?
Many thanks. I let the floor now to Chiara and Letizia, and then I give the floor to Emanuele sorry, for Matteo. So Chiara, you can, Letizia, you can answer. Then if there is other question from the speaker, other consideration after all these different contribution.
Okay, thank you for the questions. For now, we are in we have to find a proper name because for now it's quite long. It's not very attractive, and also no, is for now is just a script. A mashup with R and Python, and we are looking for programmers and informaticians that can help us to put all this on a server and build a website. We are also assisted by Codici and Enostra that are helping us to develop also the visual, the interface, user experience, and all this stuff. And so yes, for the first question. And the second, and we are using Landsat data, so the resolution is 30 meters. We are using the downscaled Landsat product.
Sorry, we had an issue with the audio. If you could please repeat.
Thanks.
Okay. So for the name, we don't have yet a name. We are developing this communication part. And also the platform is we have to build them. We are looking for informatician and programmers who can help us to put all these script that now is just a script in R and Python in a server, and develop also a platform, a web platform with a user interface. And for the part of the interface, we have an external help of Ecodici and then Ostra that are you it is working or?
Yeah.
Okay, and they are helping us to develop the part of the web, the user experience part. And for the last question, the resolution is 30 meters because we are using the downscaled Landsat product and the digital elevation model and the OpenStreetMap follow the Landsat resolution. Thank you.
I think we have lost the sound to the room, or is it just me?
Yes.
Massimo, I think you're unmuted.
Listen? Yes. Okay. I don't know, Matilde, if you want to say something or...
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I had a question a bit to the whole group because there's so many interesting, evidence-based findings across all these studies that speak directly to, policymakers. So I was wondering, especially, at the University of Padova, if you had communication or any of you had communication channels with policymakers.
Okay, thanks. I let the floor to Matteo for some consideration on the...
Yes, so the Laporta affirms that if in the 50s and 60s we in all Europe we had an escalated control model, basically of so the idea is that protest was not very tolerated in the afterwar. In the 70s, 80s, there was a progressive shift to a negotiated control model. Okay, so that is the idea that she presents. But in the case of Italy, I mean, there is this debate, because also we cannot say that the negotiated model was entirely, let's say, embraced with time, because especially at the local level, we see in the case of Val di Susa, but also in the case of Genova in 2001, that was a clear violation of the right to protest. So in a way, we could see that we reached a hybrid model, but I mean, in my interpretation, the last laws being, I mean, the approach that is pushed by the Meloni government is in a way a return to the past. Okay, so some evolution, some progresses that we have had in time now are being cancelled. For instance, in terms of road blockade, for instance, that which becomes a penal crime, and so on and so forth. So in this way, basically, but it's also something that can be discussed and criticized. I mean, it's a very dualistic model that it's a simplification of reality, okay, to have only two models. So perhaps we could expand and see, let's say, different gradation of, okay, rather than a bipolar.
Thanks. I don't know if Abdullah want to say something about the research, and then very few seconds, because now we arrive at 4:30. We are in closure of our contribution. So thanks for all. Thanks for your contribution. Thanks for people here in the room. Thanks for people online. And see you. Have a good afternoon. And we see again at the next occasion. And we are preparing the website of the Jamone Center of Excellence. All this presentation and the video will be available to you. Many thanks for the speakers, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you, Massimo. Bye,
Thank you very
everyone.
much.
Thank you. Bye.